What's up, guys? In this video I'm going to be starting a new series, a full stack development series, where I'm going to walk you through everything that I've learned in terms of front end and back end development from HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP and MySQL. And we're going to start off by going through HTML right here. I've done a tutorial on HTML in the past where I've tried to cover it in I think it was 10 minutes, 11 minutes, but obviously I ended up missing a few things just because of the time limit that was set. So this one is going to be a bit more in depth. I'm going to try and make sure I cover all these points that you see on the screen, but without further ado, let's get right into it. Just as a side point, if the tech stack that I just mentioned, the technologies that I mentioned earlier, made no sense to you, the HTML, CSS, JavaScript, PHP, MySQL, if none of that makes sense to you, that's fine, completely fine. I'm going to walk you through all of it one by one, and I'm going to make sure you understand the concepts, the syntax, everything that's involved with these languages. And all I'm asking from you is just to make sure you have a text editor and you code along with me and you practice as well, because that's the best way for you to pick this up in a very short period of time. Alright, so we're going to start with HTML. HTML basically stands for Hypertext Markup Language, and it is the industry standard for structuring and displaying web pages and its content. As you can see, if I right click on any web page and I hit inspect, and on the right you will see the elements in that HTML. So this is basically the website on the left, and on the right the HTML for that website. So any website you go to is basically made up of HTML elements. So all of these are just elements, and this is how the browser interprets these elements and displays them on the page. So this is exactly what we're going to be learning. There's multiple elements, as you can see. The P right here is for paragraph. The H3, let me try to zoom in into this if I can. Hold on one second, there we go. So the H3 is for heading, P for paragraph, UL for unordered list, where you can get bullet points like this. So we're going to take it step by step and just try to learn these. So let's get into our code editor. I'm using, Visual Studio right here. So if you don't have it, just make sure you get something to code on. If you just Google Visual Studio, which is what I would recommend, or Sublime Text Editor, and just hit download and get it running. I've already created a new file called 101.html, so if you can go ahead and do that as well, and then we'll get started. So at the very start, the HTML has a specific structure for us to follow, and that structure basically looks something like this. So we do a less than sign, and then exclamation mark, doc type, space HTML, and then we do a greater than sign and close it off, and then new line, open, or less than tag, less than sign, sorry, HTML, close it off, and it will create a closing tag. So this would be called an opening tag, and this would be a closing tag. The only difference between an opening tag and a closing tag is the slash right here at the beginning. So this is basically the structure that you will see with most HTML tags, is that they will have an opening tag and a closing tag, except for a few specific tags that we'll go through later. So like I said, this is how you start a HTML structure. You've got this at the top, and then you've got an opening tag of HTML and a closing tag of HTML, and inside of this HTML you'll have a body tag, an opening and closing tag body, and just make sure that you try to indent this. So when you first create the body, it might be something like this. So you could just, if you could just highlight this and then hit tab, and that will push it inside. It's just for code readability. It'll make it easier for you to, once you have a huge file with plenty of code, it'll just be easier for you to see all the code. So basically anything that you write inside the body tag is what you will see in this page. So all of this right here is within the body tag. So if we check the code right here, you'll see that this body tag has all of this stuff in it, and this is why you're seeing it on the screen. If it's outside the body tag, you're not going to see it on the screen. So that's the first thing to remember. So all the code that we're going to be writing, or most of it, is going to be inside the body tag. So let's start. We're going to start with, what do we have to cover first? We've got the head tag. Well, the head tag is a exception to the rule that I just mentioned. The head tag actually sits outside the body tag and it goes above it. So before the body tag, we'll add an opening head tag and then a closing head tag. And within this head tag is basically something we call a title tag. And this is where, this is where this title right here gets added. So we're going to put 101 HTML and save that, and then let's just refresh. We need to open up the actual file that we're coding, which is 101. So let me just copy this, paste it here, and change this to 101, and that should open up the file. And you can see at the top here it says 101 HTML. So this is basically the title tag that we've seen here. Besides that, inside the head tag, we usually have things like meta tags, which is basically information about the web page. And as you can see, this meta tag doesn't have a closing tag, so it's just an opening meta tag, but there's no closing meta, so it's self-closing as they call it. And you will have things like, for example, you will give it attributes. These things we call attributes. So different tags will have different attributes. The meta tag has an attribute of name, and you can give it a name, for example, description, and then the content attribute will be some description about this page. So these meta tags are basically used for SEO, search engine optimization. So this basically tells Google the sort of information about the web page. So if I was to go to let's do a search here, let's do Arsenal, for example. Let me remove this. If I do Arsenal, if I just search for Arsenal, oh my god, what's happening? I can't even search Google right now. Let's just do an Arsenal search. As you can see, for example, the Arsenal page right here has a title, and it has some information that was posted 3 hours ago. So this, for example, could be a meta tag that has some information about the website that Google pulls. So that's all the meta tag does, really. It just gives the search engine some sort of information about the page. So it's good, like I said, for SEO purposes. And that's basically it for the head tag for now. We've got headings. So for headings, we have 6 different tags that we're going to look at. We've got the H1, I'm a H1, we've got H2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I'm just copying and pasting this, and I'm going to change this to, if I can do this correctly, I'm going to change this to 2. I'm going to change this to 3, 4, 5, and 6. There we go, that was better. And if I just view this, you'll see the difference between each one. So I am a H1, H2, H3, H4, 5, and 6. These are all different titles or headings for a page, and each one has a different size, basically, as you can see. And that's all that does, really. So that's quite basic. Moving on, we've got the paragraphs. So for paragraphs, we've got a P tag, and that has an opening closing just like the headings. P tag will be, let's just say I'm a paragraph, and these are basically just, if I inspect, these are just, you could say, boxes for text that's being rendered on the screen. And as you can see, it has some orange colored boxes above it and below it, and these are just spaces. So every paragraph will have a bit of spacing to keep it away from other elements. So if I added 2 paragraphs underneath each other, for example, I'm paragraph 1 and I am paragraph 2, you'll see that there is space between the two right here, and that's basically the paragraph. So if you have any sort of text that you'd like to add and you want to space it away from different elements in the page, then you can add a paragraph. Moving on, we've got unordered lists. So for unordered lists, we're going to move down a bit and create an unordered list, which is UL, literally what it stands for. And within a UL, you've got the opening tag and a closing tag, of course. Inside of that, we'll have the list item. So basically a unordered list will have a bunch of list items, and that will be the bullet points. So as you can see here, this is literally a UL, and within it you have all of these list items. If I just show you right here, you've got the UL, and then you click on the arrow, it will show you all the LIs inside of it. So that's a live example for you of what a UL is, and the LIs. LI stands for list item, and UL for unordered list. So let's add a few list items here. I'm the first list item, second, third, fourth. That should be enough. Second, third, whoops, fourth. Let's check that out. There we go. Bullet points. Let me zoom this in. Can I zoom it in? Of course I can. I'm the first item, I'm the second item, I'm the third item, I'm the fourth item, and these are basically just bullet points. And the difference between an unordered list and an ordered list is, well, I'm going to show you right here. I'm going to copy and paste this and change UL to OL, which is ordered list, and the difference you will see is just the bullet points. The bullet points will be changed to numbers. So now this is ordered. This is the first one, the second, the third, the fourth, etc. Quite basic. I'm sure you will understand this very easily. Okay, so moving on, we've got the dividers. The dividers are element, and this is basically one of the most common HTML elements I will be using. And this is basically just an opening tag of div and a closing tag of div, and within it you can add any sort of content that you'd like. And this is basically what this does, is just gives you a container where you can add whatever you want within it. So for example, I've got a div right here and I would like to add some paragraphs inside of it. So I'm going to add some paragraph tags, and I'm going to add I'm a paragraph within a div. I'm also a paragraph within a div. And just to show you how that's going to look right here, you can't really see the div, but it's there. As you can see, this is basically just a container without any borders or spacing. There's no orange or green spacing right there. It just acts as a container for you to style or to divide the content, as the name suggests. And you can add as many divs as you'd like within the HTML just to divide the content up. So for example, you could have a section where you would add the title. You might put that in a div. Then you have another section where you would like to add the content, and then another section where you would like to add the footer of the page. To give you a live example, I'm going to go to Code Wars and I'm going to look at this page right here, And as you can see, we've got these containers. Each one is basically what they call a kata, and each one has a title, a bunch of numbers, a bunch of text. But as you can see, the color out here is grayed out for each of these containers, and these containers are basically just dividers or divs. I could probably inspect and check that, but without even looking at it, I can tell you that it's probably a div. As you can see right here, a div, another div, another div. It's just separators or different containers to separate your code or the content. And there's no spacing. Like with the paragraphs, the spacing that you get there is not included. So these paragraphs have some spacing, but the div itself does not have any spacing. So this is one of the differences between a div and a paragraph. I think that's that for divs. The next tag is a span. Now a span is closer to a paragraph, but it does not include, it doesn't come with any styling out the box, and it has some different CSS attributes to it, but we'll get to that later. For now, all you need to know about spans is that it's used for usually text that you'd like to style, but it doesn't come with that with any spacing out the box, unlike paragraph, which does. So let's just add some random text here. I'm a span. I'm also a span. I'm also a span. And you'll notice the difference here. Excuse me. You'll notice the difference on line 15 and 16. We added I'm a paragraph 1, I'm a paragraph 2. And when we saw that on the website, you could see that there was space between each paragraph, and now we've added 2 spans, and you'll notice that there's no space between them. So if I just refresh 101, you'll see that they're actually on the same line. So this is one of the differences as well. These are on a new line because they're acting as blocks. This is one block and this is another block, and each block would usually cover the whole line. But with a span, it just takes the exact amount of space that it requires. It does not cover the whole line because it's a inline block basically. So it's on the same line. So this is one of the use cases that you would use a span for when you want to add text or you want to style some text, but you want to make sure that it's within the same line. It doesn't take up a whole line. You would use a span. Like with divs as well, the div usually takes the whole line or takes up the whole space from left to right, whereas a span only takes the space that it requires. I think that's clear, hopefully. If it's not, it will become clear as we go along the course, don't worry. What do we have next? We've got links, and this is one of the most used tags as well. It's quite common to use this. A link is basically an A tag, an opening and closing A tag with some text in the middle. Click here. Let's just check this out. Okay, we need to add some spacing here because otherwise everything is going to be in the same line. So what I'm going to do here is just show you another tag which is called BR, and it's basically for line breaks. It gives you a new line in HTML. So if I add 2 of these, it will just create 2 new lines, as you can see. And now for the link, the A tag right here, the click here, if you try to click on this, it doesn't actually do anything. The reason for that is because the A tag usually takes an attribute, which is some text before this sign right here. And that attribute is href, which takes in the link in quotes. So you do href equals to quotes. Let's say www.google.com. So now let's save that and try to refresh. Now you can see it's turned into a link. If I just hover over it, it will say google.com, but it's not actually going to take me to Google because it's taking me to this path. What you need to do is actually add either a slash or HTTPS. let's remove this www. That should work. Now let's try again. We refresh and click, it takes you to Google, but it also takes us away from our current page. So if you wanted to open this Google website on a new tab, we can do a target, which is another attribute. Attribute target equals to underscore blank. If we refresh and try that, now you'll see that it actually opens up a new tag, or a new tab, sorry, and you still have your other website opened up. So that's that for tags, really. That's pretty much it for tags. What else do we have? We've got we've done links, we've got images. Images is an interesting one because it's self-closing. It's a self-closing tag, so it only takes, you only have to write the opening tag, you don't have to write the closing tag. But you could just add a slash right here, which represents a self-closing tag. And the image takes an attribute of source, which is the source for the image that you want to show. That could be a local path, or it could be a link to a website. So we're actually going to get a link to an image because we don't want to use anything locally. If you just type in, if you type in lorem image, or you just Google that first link, you will be able to just copy this and get a random image on the fly. And this image also takes in the width as an attribute and the height as an attribute. So we're gonna do, let's do 400 and 400 and save that, and let's just check that out. There you go. If I was to try and change this to 100 width, 100 height, whoops, and check that out, you'll see that we still have the image, but the width and height has changed accordingly. So that's good. That's basically how you add in images, or one of the ways you can add in images on HTML. What else do we have on the list? Iframe. Iframe is basically, again, it's an opening and closing tag for an iframe, and this iframe usually takes in a source. And basically this tag is a tag that gives you the ability to load a website within a website. So for example, if I wanted to load Google inside this website, I can just add in https google.com, and it also takes in a title as an attribute, but we'll just write Google for now and see how this comes up, because it might actually get blocked, I'm not too sure. Well, it actually works. There you go. So we've opened up Google inside our own website, but I think this might take in a width and a height. I'm not too sure. Let's just try it out, because right now it's too small. Can't really see anything. Let's do 500 and try it out, and it works. Excellent. So now we've loaded Google within our website, which is something that you might need to do in your web pages. But let me just space this out, add some line breakers between the images, the links, the iframe, because it's getting a bit messy. There we go. So that's that. Hopefully that's straightforward as well. The next few tags that we have, we've got B, M, strong, and small. These are quite straightforward. These are just tags that manipulate the text. So we've got B, which I'm gonna add this inside a paragraph. So I'm gonna have a paragraph, and inside of it I'll have the B tag. B tag will basically just be an opening tag and a closing tag with some text within it. I'm text inside a B tag, and if you can guess what this will do, it will just turn the text into bold, and that's basically it. If you do strong, let me try to, okay, I'm gonna have to do this manually. twice. Strong, this will basically do the same thing. B and strong are literally just turning texts into bold text. And we also have, what was it, EM? EM, I believe, is italic text. Let me just confirm that. There you go, turns it into italic. I think we should create them separately and just keep them as they are. So I'm going to change this to B. I'm inside a B tag, I'm inside a M tag. Whoops, M tag. And we'll add a line breaker. Actually, we'll keep each one in its own paragraph. So what we've done is just added a paragraph for this B tag and a paragraph with an EM inside of it. So if we check this, each one is a different line. One is bolded and the other one is italic. That's straightforward, I think. And then we have the small tag. The small tag turns the text, as you can guess, into small text. So if I do small, I'm text inside a small tag. And just refresh that and check. You can't really see the difference much, but it's supposed to turn the text smaller than usual. If you can see here, the font is 16 pixels. The third one from the top under color, it says 16 pixels. If you go to the small, you'll see it's 13.3. So the difference is not huge, but it does turn the text smaller than usual. So that's that for this. Now to the more interesting parts. We've got tables, forms, text inputs, audio, video, comments. So let's start with table. For the tables, let's put a HR between all of this. A HR is basically a line. As you can see at the top here, we've got a line. This will do the same down here. At the bottom, you see there's a line, just so that we can separate things. And I'm going to do a new line here. So this is literally just a line, and then this is just some spacing. The BR is for spacing, HR is for a line. Now to create a table tag, this will be a opening and closing tag of table. Whenever you open a tag, try to close it off immediately so that it doesn't get confusing for you. Because sometimes you will actually open a tag and then forget to close it. So if you open it and close it at the same time and then write the content within, it'll just help you to never forget to close a tag, basically. And always try to keep the tags above each other or aligned. So if the tag starts here, it should end here within the same line. It shouldn't end here where it's misaligned or inside where it's also misaligned. Hopefully that's clear. It should just be above each other. So right here, I could just click on this, it will close it off. Inside the table, we have the T head opening and closing tag, which will basically be the table headers. And in that table headers, we have a row, a table row, TR, which is an opening closing tag again. And inside the TR, we have table data, I think, but it's TD anyway. TD, and inside TD we'll have, let's try to use real world examples here. What can this be? We'll have username, and then we'll add another TD. Let's try to capitalize this. TD, we'll have username, we'll have email, we'll have another one called, what do we have? Age, gender, nationality, occupation. I think that's enough. So that's the headers for the table. If we just have a look at this quickly, you'll see that we have the headers right here. Username, email, age, gender, nationality, occupation. Doesn't really look good so far. We need to add a bit more content. So outside the T head, or after the T head, we want to add in tbody, opening and closing tag again. So you need to make sure that all of this is in the table tag. You've got the t-head and the t-body. T-head first and then a t-body second. T-body will be the content. And again, we have a tr for row. This will be the first row. Within the row, we'll have a td. Opening and closing tag again. Let's say I'm going to use my name, Mohammed. Email, let's just use some random email. Age, we'll do a random age as well. I wish I was 20. Gender, we'll use male. Nationality, we'll use African. Although that's not a nationality, but that's fine. Occupation, we'll put programmer. And that's one row. Let's add a few more, or at least one more, maybe two. Okay, so let's just change this quickly to Adam. Adam, keep the rest the same. Jessica, 25, female, American. Programmer's fine. Let's just mix it up a bit. 28, yeah, he's a male. So let's save that. As you can see, we've got 3 different rows: table row, and table row. If we just view this, you'll see that we've got the content aligned to the headers. So we've got username and the content below it, email, content below it, age, gender, nationality, occupation. What we could add to the table, an attribute called border, or border, border, sorry. I think this takes in a number, can't quite remember. If I change this to 10, yes, it is a number. So we'll do a border, attribute border equals to 1, and it will just border it for us so it looks a bit neater. You can also just add or change the number to maybe 5 and just see the difference. I think it's just the outside, the border from outside, that changes. But you get the idea. We'll keep it as that. That's basically how you add a table. Quite straightforward. It takes a bit of time to get used to, but you'll be fine, I'm sure. So that's that for tables. What do we have next? I think it's forms. It is forms, yeah. So this is also an interesting one, but you'll be able to get the hang of it quite quickly. If we do form, this also has an opening and closing tag, and within this form you will basically create things like different inputs. So for example, if I look at, let's use Code Wars as an example again. If I log out and go to the sign in page, you'll see here that they have you'll see here that they have an input for email and password, and this can basically be a form with input fields. Let me just inspect and see if it is a form or not. You see right here they have a form, and inside that form they will have different inputs, as you can see, and that's basically what we're going to be doing. And these inputs help you take in information from the user and perform an action based on that information. So the first input we're going to look at is the input tag with an attribute type of text, and this is used for something like this, where you can type in some text. We also have, I'm going to add a line break here just to give some spacing. We also have input type email, just for emails. text input. I'm just adding some text to give some clarity. Email. We also have, let me add a line break. We also have, what else do we have? We've got checkboxes. We've got a checkbox, and we also have a radio input, and they're all using the input tag, but just the type attribute has different values. So this, I should have mentioned this earlier, but this attribute, this side is called the attribute, and this is the value of the attribute. So this is the name of the attribute on the left side, and on the right side you have the value of the attribute. So the value for this attribute would be radio, and as you can see, the only difference between each of these input fields is the value of the attribute. If we just view this quickly, you'll see the difference between each one. So the text input, just add in any text, it's just a box. Email, same thing, but it's usually used just for email. If you try to submit it, usually it will tell you this is not an email. And you have a checkbox, which you can check and uncheck, and you have a radio, which you would usually combine with different options. Like for example, if you had, let's do a quick example of yellow, input type, radio, and then we'll change this to red with no new lines between them. So here you've got red or yellow. Usually you pick one or the other, and the way you would do that is you would give this radio the same name. So we would have something like color is the attribute, or sorry, the name of the attribute is name, and the value of the attribute would be the same. So this input will hold the attribute called color, and you will have different values for that color. So now if you go back and you try to click on one of these, it will select one or the other. You can't select both because they both have the same name. But if I was to change this to height, for example, just randomly, you can now select both of them because they don't share the same name anymore. But again, if I put it back to color, we've got two different colors and they use the same name attribute, so you're only able to pick one of them. Whereas with checkbox, you can pick as many as you want. That's basically the difference between a radio and a checkbox. Checkbox, you can pick as many as you want. Radio, usually you can only pick one if you share the same, if the inputs share the same attribute. I think what we have next is select. Select is similar to, what's it similar to? It's similar to input radio, but it's not an input tag, it's a select tag. And inside the select tag, the opening closing tag, we have an option tag, and this will basically give you the options that you can select from. So let's say again we have colors. Let's write colors outside the select, and then inside the options we have yellow as an option, red, blue, green, and then we check that. Let's just give it a new line so that it looks a bit better. Well, let's add two new lines here above colors, and then you see at the bottom here we've got colors as a text and then an option to choose, a drop down menu where you can choose the color that you'd like. So it's similar to radio, but you can't see all the options until you open the drop down basically. And I'm sure you've seen this on other websites, and this is basically how they achieve it, or one of the ways, using select. So all of these are usually tags that are used within a form to collect data from a user. So in the future, in the next few classes that we're going to go through, when we're submitting forms, for example, a login form, we're going to be collecting data from the user using these input fields, and then we're going to perform an action based on that. Alright, next up we have audio and video. We're getting close to the end, so let's jump to audio. Audio is quite straightforward, to be honest with you. And it's basically, again, an opening and closing tag, which takes an attribute called controls, and inside the audio you would give it the source, and this is a closing tag or self-closing tag that doesn't require an extra closing tag like this. So this is enough, and inside the source you would give it the actual source of the file. So let's say we have a file called sound effect.mp3, and then the type of the file is audio mp3. This is just an example, and the thing with audio is that you can give it as many sources as you want. So it could be the same audio file but different formats. So here we'll give it OG and then OG. And basically what the browser will do is it will go through each of these sources and it will try to see which one the browser can actually run, which one does the browser support. So if the browser supports MP3, it will play it first. But if it doesn't, it will go to the next source and it will try to play this source. If it can, it will play it. If it can't, it will basically jump to the next source if it exists. Otherwise, it will say, if the browser doesn't support the audio tag, it will say your browser does not support the audio tag, or any text that you add here will show up if the browser itself does not support this tag. So just again to go over that quickly, the audio tag is an opening and closing tag that takes in the controls. This controls attribute gives it the ability to play, pause, rewind, etc. As you can see if I highlight over it, if this attribute is present, the browser will offer controls to allow the user to control audio playback, including volume, seeking, pause, resume, playback, etc. Without this, you wouldn't be able to do any of that. So that's why you would add this in. And inside the audio tag, you would have sources. Each source tag is a self-closing tag, and you would give it an attribute of source with the file path, and that could be a local file on your computer or a link on a website. And you would give it the type attribute, which will be the type of the file, and the browser will basically go through each source until it can find the correct source that it can support or it can play. Video tag is very similar to this as well. The only difference is that a video will also take in width and height attributes, and it will take in the controls just like the audio, and it's an opening and closing tag, which also has within it the source tag, which is a self-closing tag, so there's no closing tag required again, and it takes in an attribute of source, src. Okay, so I was actually able to get myself a video or link the video tag to a local video, so I'm going to try to refresh this and see if it works. It looks like it does work. The video itself, I think the height is not working as intended for some reason. There's some white space at the bottom, but as you can see, we've got the video loaded. You can play, and you've got the controls right here. If I try to remove this controls, what happens? You can't actually even play it because the buttons are gone. But that's basically it for videos. And I could do the same thing with audio, but I think you get the point. This would load if I had a local file. Again, if you want to use files from the internet or links from the internet, you can use iframe to load, for example, YouTube videos, etc. But that's it for this part. I think the last thing is just comments, and this is something that you'll use quite often as well, especially when you're sharing code between different developers, or if you've got developers that are reading your code and you want to tell them something, or you're trying to communicate something through the code, you can just leave a comment there. And the quick way to do this is to do, I think on Windows it's Control/, and on Mac it's Command/, but it's basically just doing a less than, exclamation mark, dash dash, another dash dash, and greater than. And the command/ or Control/ just speeds it up for you. And within here you can write whatever you want, and that will be just comments that will not appear on the page. So if I have, this is a comment that won't show up on the page, and I refresh, you see right here you don't have the comment appearing, but if you check on the side you'll see that it's there within the file, within the page, but it doesn't actually show up on the browser. I think that's all the tags that I'll be using on a day-to-day basis when it comes to HTML. We've covered quite a lot, so just take a second to take it all in and try to practice going through all of this. I'm gonna try to leave a exercise for you in the description, so make sure to check that out just to practice these things that we've learned out. It'll be a simple exercise that I'm gonna link to on maybe GitHub or Bitbucket, and you can just get the exercise from there and attempt it out. But yeah, I think next we're going to be looking at CSS and trying to style these things that we've built, or we're going to build something new and try to style it so that it looks a bit prettier than this, because this is quite dull. As much as we've learnt, we still have some styling to do to make it look better. So make sure you tune into that, and yeah, till next time.